Hi y'all, it's Kimberly here. Thank you for coming to my channel. Well, today I was watching a video about motorcycle content, and it was an AI generated type of video about motorcycles, and it was titled something like the 15 or I don't remember what it was, 15 worst motorcycles, or don't buy these 10 or 15 worst motorcycles, or something to that effect. I can't remember. I tried to look for the video and I couldn't find it. And this is not just, I'm going to talk about AI generation, how it affects the motorcycle community, but I'm also going to say that even if you're not into motorcycles, I'm going to talk about AI and how it can affect it's not just about motorcycles. It's, if you're a consumer, how it affects you buying a car, a house, getting better interest rates, or it can affect so many parts of your life, this AI generation. And so I'm going to talk about that, and I did a whole lot of research this morning, and I usually put it into a bullet point system, and I have it right here, and I kind of glance at it, and then I talk about it in my own original words. I try to form like a original organic way of me expressing what I read or researched, because I don't want to pick up anybody else's original content. I like to make it my own. And if if you've been to college or high school, anybody who's had to write a report or anything like that, you understand what I mean. So I try to do it that way, but I have so much research right now, and it usually takes me all week, maybe a week or two, to do it in that system. So I'm just going to read it off my notes, which are like in chicken scratch, in cursive, and I'm going to have to wear my glasses for this. So to me, I think it's important. It just kind of pissed me off a little bit. It just made me very, very upset, because it was very formulaic the way the video went. Every single number where they were bringing up a certain motorcycle, it was about it's the worst motorcycle. Dealerships are having a hard time selling them. They're offering deep discounts because they can't move them off the floor, and this is just the worst motorcycle. Don't buy it. Wait till you see the next one. It's even not as bad as the next one. And every single, the way they did it was so formulaic. It was, all they did was replace the name of the motorcycle. And I actually got mad by the end of the list. I was like, these are all good motorcycles. This is BS. So I'm going to go into how bad and how detrimental AI is going to be for especially content creation. Okay, and okay, I'm going to start out with, well, I think it's super dangerous because it gathers, what is written or printed, on the internet, and it's from all forms of sources. If you've been paying attention, you can see AI created videos all over the internet. YouTube is full of them. And you may think that's not right, and it's probably not right. I don't think it's right. I don't think there's enough warnings that come along with AI generated content. Dozens of these AI lists are being, populated all over YouTube and other platforms, and I just really hate that. And because, whenever you're researching your subject to make a video, you want to use reliable source material, and that's paramount to legitimizing factual information and professional, bringing a professional tone to it, like a journalist or a reporter would, which is another thing that they've been talking a lot about, or they, as in, I don't know, people on the internet, people who are reporting on it, are saying that journalism may be a profession that's going to go by the wayside because of AI. To me, that really bothers me a lot. And one of the biggest caveats of AI generated content is, the huge allowance for untrue and propagandized information. especially for the average person that's not knowledgeable about whatever they're researching, and that is not particularly motivated to do their own due diligence. So if you're going to depend totally upon some list you find on YouTube, or you're not going to do much research into it, that's what makes it dangerous. People just blindly believing in it. And I'm going to just kind of go over a little bit of what AI is. Some people may not know that the abbreviation AI stands for artificial intelligence, which is it's the technology that gives a computer the capability to demonstrate human-like qualities, like, and abilities like problem solving, decision making, and learning, but without critical thinking skills. And critical thinking skills are super important because that gives you the ability to assess what an assumption is, and to question data that you're collecting. And a computer doesn't think. It doesn't really think. A brain thinks, but a computer analyzes data and uses it in a way to create, I think, probably the most commonality of all the data that they collect. Because once a computer is going across the internet collecting data, what is not there, they won't know. It's the same thing as a human, but you have the ability to critically think, and you can rule out things. A computer doesn't think. So a computer is learning without thinking, and an organic human brain has unlimited possibilities, and a computer can only progress through patterns that it learned through, like, applied programming, planted data, and like algorithms that it is adapting to. So therefore, computers are not smarter than humans. They just have an automatic consistency for, I think, lower levels of mistakes. And AI learns from what it has access to, the data that is there that it can have access to. And if something's omitted, then it won't have that data in there. It will generate content according to what data is already there. Okay, and so an example I'm going to use is how a computer learns and adapts would be like if the Spanish word for love, which is the verb for love, would be amar, amar. The noun would be amor. If people have ever heard mi amor, that means like my love in Spanish. If that word was nowhere to be found on the internet, I know it's not possible, but suspend your belief that it's there and just believe that it's not there for the sake of the video, that there's no trace of the word amar, the Spanish word, or any form of the verb, or any Spanish noun like mi amor. If that was not there, and like I say, just roll with it. Okay, computer would rifle through all the data on the internet, all that it has access to, and it would have to make a computerized guess by sourcing all the derivative root words of like Romance languages of the world and other edifying information that it could come up with, some word, some form of a plausible word for love in Spanish. And if there was no trace, no reference whatsoever, what would be the outcome? All forms of the word amar would not be there. So it would have to, without critical thinking skills, using the data that it has, I really don't know what, I have no idea. I can't even think how it would do it, but because using the derivative words like from the Spanish I don't know. There's Romance languages throughout Europe, and like Italian, some in South America. There's even like some Asiatic, I think, derivative words that it could compile data from, with no Latin reference to that exact word, AMAR. If there was no trace of it, you know, I'm going to try to think maybe it would come up with some forms. Like what I thought of was, like, mi cielo is, it means, it's like my heaven, or, I mean, it literally translates to like my heaven, the sky. It's a, like a affectionate term, kind of meaning like, I want to say like the highest love that you have for somebody, mi cielo. And because techo is roof, like the roof of a house, and it can also mean like or cielo raso, which is like the interior of a finished roof or ceiling. And I know from here in Texas, I understand that some Spanish people do use cielo to mean like the ceiling in a building or a house, you know, which I don't know how, like in Spain or I don't know how it's referenced other places, but I do know that it is used here like that. But it could come up with some form like that, because it would be analyzing data of terms of affection, like I said, mi cielo. But that literally can also mean a, you know, the sky or heaven, you know, in that form. So AI would have to look at things, and it wouldn't quite get it right. If that exact word is not there for it to source from, it would look for other references. Like I was trying to use that as an example. That may not be a very good example, but of what I could, you know, because people use, you know, mi cielo. I've heard that before, you know, and it is kind of saying like mi amor, but it means, it's in a different way, but it does kind of mean that. I've heard it being used. And also, like in the Latin form, you know, amar it refers to love, but AI could also generate from a Hebrew, AMAR in Hebrew refers to say or speak. So that's how information can get, you know, confusing. It can confuse a computer because it doesn't have critical thinking skills. So the data collection would be based on the available data and algorithms and all the things that I mentioned before. Oh, and there's one part that I kind of left out. Mi cielo, when I was talking about mi cielo, it's like a form of endearment, a term of endearment, like my heaven, my sweetheart, or my darling. It's something like that. So that would be like maybe something that AI would pick up on if the word AMAR was not found. So AI would be trying to, out of all the data it collects, trying to pinpoint a particular word. So it might use some term of affection off of that. So you can see with this example, you know, how it can be unreliable, how the data can be unreliable and could be turned into something that's inaccurate and like a skewed dissemination of information and put into videos that are posted on social media. So AI generated videos, I really don't like them. I think I've listened to so many of them. I've been listening to a lot of them lately. And this morning when I was listening to that one about the motorcycles, it was a little bit, the reason it kind of, it just kind of, I don't know, I just didn't like it because all the motorcycles on that list were fairly decent motorcycles, and some of them were actually kind of like innovative motorcycles for a certain brand, and they're trying to present a model that might appeal to a certain demographic that they haven't hit yet, or trying to, you know, build a better customer base, bigger customer base. And it was just listing off motorcycles and saying they were bad for no reason. It didn't give an exact example, like off the top of my head, like a mechanical issue, like the solenoid is bad on this motorcycle, on this brand of motorcycle. The solenoid always goes bad after 20,000 miles or something like that. There's like a noted problem that it's very factual, that it has to be worked on to make the motorcycle work correctly. Or it's just like if there's a recall on a certain model of motorcycles for ABS systems or something like that. It wasn't expressing, expert data to be used for somebody really looking to buy a motorcycle. It could, deter them from buying one of these motorcycles that they were all perfectly good motorcycles, except for the one at the end. I'm going to say this, and this is my own personal feeling, is the Livewire. Harley Davidson made an electric motorcycle, or not made, they didn't make it, but they were selling an electric motorcycle called the Livewire. And with all the electrical influence that is going into cars now, this is hot. It's a hot point issue because, Texas, our grid for electricity is not good. I can't imagine, to me, I can't fathom the entire world turning into nothing but electric vehicles. I think it would be, oh my gosh, it could cause the end of creation to me. I can't get with that. And see, the Harley Davidson is the big dog of motorcycles. They are the heaviest, most loudest, most, they are the end all be all cruiser, bagger motorcycles. They have cornered that market. And other motorcycle companies have tried to make cruiser type motorcycles and bagger type motorcycles, in a form of copying Harley Davidson. And to collect, more, not everybody wants to buy a sport bike. Not everybody is comfortable with the crunched up, riding position on a sport bike, and the insurance on sport bikes is sometimes a lot more than even some of the top Harley Davidsons or cruiser type motorcycles. I was shocked when I looked at the cost of insurance comparing sport bikes to cruisers. I found like some of the cruisers that I thought would be way more, twice as much as a sport bike, it was the other way around. Some of the sport bikes were way more expensive on insurance than the cruisers, and I didn't realize that. And so posting all this on social media, I think it has a huge influence on how people buy, and I think it's super dangerous. That motorcycle list was just a formulaic type of script, and it was the same for all, and it didn't, like I said, it didn't point out any particular issues with each motorcycle of why not to buy this motorcycle. And I think that's very dangerous for the economy of motorcycling, and this can go for any type of industry. If it had been a list about cars, don't buy this car because it's just the worst car ever, and it didn't list, a mechanical reason, or it's like 5 times more expensive for the insurance, or there's always a problem where something happens at 50,000 miles or whatever it is. I think that is, it influences buyers not to buy something, or even if it's buy this because of this, this is the best one, but it doesn't say why you should buy it. Don't be like sheep and just buy something just because everybody else is. Like I say, do your due diligence. And the buying patterns for motorcycles can change and fluctuate, which, It can ruin industries. It can, I think, it can have a huge effect on, you know, not just like industries that are providing the parts, steel, aluminum, the carbon, everything that you put into, and even the gear that goes with it, the maintenance of it. These types of industries, you know, are hand in hand with motorcycles. You have to have maintenance gear, you have to have all kinds of other things. Motorcycling is an expensive hobby, you know. A lot of money goes into it, and I think it can really affect the economics of motorcycles. And, you know, why would you let a machine pick your next bike? You know, think for yourself. Use your critical thinking skills and think, you know, do I need one that is... Some of the bikes on there were... The Indian Scout 60 was on there, which is a low setting bike. And I'm short. I need something I can fit on. I can't fit on a, you know, 800-pound bagger. I'm not going to be buying an 900-pound bagger. I can't... You know, that's not for me. I'm 5'3". I'm not going to be comfortable, or even, I'd be so worried about crashing and falling, I wouldn't enjoy riding a bike like that. And I do know there are small women that can ride big bikes like that, but it's not something I want to choose. So it can be costly to dealerships. All this talk about, oh, they're marking everything down so cheap. Yeah, I think there are some markdowns, but not every dealership. They're not all slashing their prices $5,000 for all these bikes. You know, they got to make their money back. You know, those dealerships are expensive to run. They got to pay the mechanics. They got to pay the, you know, the employees, and order new bikes for the next year, and influence the economics of the motorcycling world is, I think, especially through the use of AI, is super irresponsible and super dangerous. And I hope that people, because I kept seeing people in the comments saying, oh, thank you for this list. Well, I know I was about to buy that bike, and thank goodness I saw this. I'm not going to buy it now. And, you know, it's like, that's, you know, it's super irresponsible. So if you're looking at these lists, don't take them as the end-all be-all of, you know, should I buy this bike or should I not? You know, you should do research into the bike. Not just, is this the worst bike? Because I notice a lot of those lists where, you know, this is the best bike for this, and this is the worst bike for this year. And it didn't have, like, specific mechanical issues, like I'm saying, like, you know, things that are really important, or things that you may not like about it. Like the live wire. I'm sorry, I just hate it. It's actually a great idea, but... You know, Harley riders aren't going to go out buying all these electric bikes. You know, if I want an e-bike, I'll go buy an e-bike. I don't want an electric motorcycle. And that's just how I feel personally. I'll never really adapt to electric motorcycles. You know, give me that gas guzzling. Well, motorcycles aren't really gas guzzling. Cars are. You know. And I just can't rock with that. And it would be like the worst motorcycle, I think. I just hate it. I know there's people who are really, I was really kind of thinking maybe it would be possibly a good invention idea. I don't know, but not now. I don't think that now. It's just the range, trying to drive it 100 miles and then having to recharge it. And if you're, a lot of people who are motorcyclists, especially cruisers and baggers, they like to go on trips, and they like to plan, you know, sometimes they drive 500 miles, 800 miles for one trip. If you had to stop 8 times in the course of that trip to recharge your bike for 30 minutes to an hour, and finding a station, finding room there that is not overcrowded and that it hasn't been destroyed and vandalized, you know, that the charging systems are up and running, you know, that's a gamble. You know, you're taking off to parts of the country, and yeah, it says there's a charging station on the map, but is it really working? You know, can you use it? And instead, you know, there's gas stations everywhere. And I think it's kind of a little bit unsafe sometimes to sit there at a charging station, especially you don't know the neighborhood, you don't know where you're at really. It doesn't appeal to me at all, especially as a woman. I don't that is one of the main reasons why I don't want an electric vehicle. Is if you're traveling, you have to go to a station and charge it up, and I don't feel comfortable sitting there, you know, like a sitting duck, waiting for somebody to come up to my window and rob me or, you know, jack me. So to me, that's another reason why I'll probably never, you know, I really did kind of think about getting an electric car, or like if I ever was able to afford a second or third car, third, fourth car maybe. Just as a toy, I might do it, but as something I would rely on, never, never. And not for a motorcycle. Well, take what you can from this, and like I say, it doesn't only apply to motorcycles. You can apply that to anything else, any other industry, or any other consumer product or item that you're thinking about. But be careful of these AI videos trying to influence you about what's good, what's bad, and you know how you should spend your money. And I think that's very, very detrimental to the economics of this country. I think it's horribly, horribly detrimental. But thank you all, and have a good day. I'll see you later.